Mute your phones, everybody. Mute your phones. Ah, good. See, well done, James. Film producer.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Really excited to kick things off here. So, again, this is the Plant Based Corporate Alliance, and this is our first online panel discussion. And joining me today, we have participants from the documentary The Game Changers. My name is Larry Green. I'm from Google, and I'm excited to be hosting this time with you today. I want to extend a special hello to all of my friends from Facebook, as well as all of my colleagues from Google here for this time here together. I also want to say a special hello and a special thank you to my partner, Sarah Caney from Facebook. She's helped me out behind the scenes just with questions. We're going to be doing poll as well as live questions here in a minute. But I just wanted to say a special hello and thank you to her as well. And so, as I just mentioned, we are going to go over the questions that we entered in the poll from a couple days ago. We're going to start off with those here in a minute, but we're also going to be taking live questions too. And so, for live questions that you may have, all you need to do is just drop those in the comments section, which we'll do here in a little bit. So with that, I wanted to do a quick introduction for our online panelists. And the first person I wanted to introduce here is James Wilkes, and he is the producer of the documentary Game Changers. And so James is a mixed martial artist, best known for winning season 9 of The Ultimate Fighter. He also serves as a combatives trainer for government agencies, including the U.S. Marshals, U.S. Marines, U.S. Army Rangers, and my favorite, the U.S. Navy SEALs. I'm a former Navy SEAL. So special welcome to James. Next.
Thanks so much for thanks for having me, Larry, and thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Next, I wanted to introduce David Goldman. So David is a sports nutritionist and exercise physiologist whose clients includes collegiate, professional, and Olympic athletes. His experience spans NCAA Division I strength and conditioning, clinical obesity research, and corporate health and performance at the Facebook headquarters. He was actually their first dietitian on site. He currently works as the chief science advisor to the Game Changers. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
Ooh. And next we have Charity Morgan. So Chef Charity Morgan is helping people live their best lives through a plant-based culinary journey. Chef Charity holds a culinary degree from the Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts and is extremely passionate about health, nutrition, and offering a more panoramic view of what it means to live a plant-based lifestyle. Charity and her husband, Derek Morgan of the Tennessee Titans, share their amazing journey of how a plant-based diet helped to transform their lifestyles as well as the performance of the Tennessee Titans. Welcome, Charity.
Hello.
Oh, yeah, we're excited to have all of you here. And so again, we are going to be jumping into the poll questions here in a minute, but if you can be thinking of any live questions that you have, you can go ahead and start to put those in the comments piece. But to kick us off, I actually just wanted to share a little bit more about myself and my personal journey into plant-based diet. So again, I work at Google. I focus on our health and performance operations there. So globally, all of the fitness centers that we have, the massage on site, all the different wellness programs and operations there. That's what I do at Google. I'm also a former college basketball player. And so when it comes to the sports piece and the fitness training and all that, that definitely appealed to me when I saw the movie, The Game Changers. But even before I saw the movie, The Game Changers, I've just been on a fitness journey since finishing up with college basketball a number of years ago. My fitness goals have been to just maintain a healthy lifestyle and try to retain some level of athleticism from my younger days. And so with that, about almost 2 years ago, I got started to use this cardio machine called the VersaClimber. And some of you may be familiar with it out there. If you haven't, it's a wonderful piece of cardio machine. And there's this challenge out there called the 10,000 foot challenge. Basically a prolonged sprint for an extended period of time. So I decided to try to take that challenge up as just a part of my fitness journey. And so with that, I started training very similar to how I used to do with basketball. And I got to a point where, or actually before I got to the point there with my diet, I was eating pretty much in the same way that I typically would as a collegiate athlete. So lots of proteins, usually in the form of meat, lots of carbs, veggies as well, but pretty much a traditional quote unquote type of diet. And so with that, I got myself ready, got myself prepared, and I actually tried it. This was about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. Tried it, started climbing, got to 9,000 feet, and my body just bombed. Pretty much ran out of gas. I literally could not move anymore. I basically fell off of it and laid on the ground for like an additional 30 minutes. Barely had enough energy to get myself together and get back home. And I was actually out of commission for the next 3 days. It was horrible. So with me, and this is the competitive side of me, I almost hit my goal. And so I decided to kind of reset myself. And actually, that was the time when I actually saw the movie Game Changers. So it resonated from a lot of different points. I was actually relating a lot to James's example in that with the battle ropes, where he was doing it for a prolonged period of time, which was very similar to what I was trying to do. And so after that, I was like, okay, let me try it. I'm going to do my training like I normally do, fitness-wise, and the only adjustment I'm going to do is just go no meat. Just keep it simple since I'm new to this journey. Just eliminate meat from my diet, as well as no sugar or no processed sugar and processed flour, and let me see what I get. So started training again, got myself to a point where I felt like I was ready. Did the challenge, knocked out 10,000 feet in just a little over an hour, so like a prolonged sprint in that way. Got off under my own power, so I didn't fall off. Walked to the showers, cleaned myself up, worked a full day at Google, normal full day at work. And then when I came home, I actually did a basketball workout for another hour and then went to bed. A little sore just from a prolonged workout, but I wasn't out of commission. And the next day, I was actually fine. So that blew me away. I was like, I'm sold. No meat ever again. It felt like I was back in my college basketball days. And so I'm like, I'm in. I'm definitely in. So I'm super excited about that. I know for all of us, we have different journeys when it comes to a plant-based diet. We can get into it from a number of different prompts or inspirations. That's been my journey. And since I'm still newer on this journey, I'm super excited to not only host this time here, but to learn as well. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and transition into our questions. And again, and Sarah's going to be helping me out here with questions you can drop into the live piece. She's going to put an example here of how to put it into the comments here. But we're going to go ahead and start with our poll question. And the first question I have here, and this question is for you, David, to kick us off. And this is in regards to COVID-19, with what's going on in the world as we are today. And so the question is, what role, if any, could a plant-based diet play in minimizing the risk of a severe course of COVID-19?
Thanks, Larry. So that's a great question. And the way I would begin is by considering who is it that ends up in an ICU or intensive care unit because of COVID. So who's most likely to really suffer a severe course? So we know that diabetics compared to non-diabetics are twice as likely to get admitted to an ICU. We know that people with high blood pressure are more than 3 times as likely to end up in an ICU. People with cardiovascular disease, like heart disease, they're more than 4 times as likely to end up in an ICU because of COVID. So the way that I would begin addressing that question is really seeing how can a plant-based diet, what is the relationship between a plant-based diet and these particular chronic diseases that increase the risk of a bad course. So I could talk about those for hours. I'll just touch on them pretty briefly, and I'll just mention sort of essentially where I'm getting the information from. So just taking a look at diabetes, the largest forward-looking study of plant-based eating and plant-based eating patterns ever published. This was came out of Harvard University, actually included Walt Willett, who we had in the film. So they compared diets built around animal foods to healthy plant-based diets, and they found that the people eating the plant-based diets, they cut their risk of diabetes by 1/3. So again, this is the biggest study ever to look at this, and we saw 1/3 lower rates. Similar thing for hypertension. So again, here we have the largest forward-looking study of animal foods and blood pressure. And here they found that eating more meat, eating more poultry, eating more seafood was linked to high blood pressure, even when people also ate a lot of plants. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Whereas people who completely bypassed meat cut their risk of high blood pressure by 1/3. We saw 1/3 for diabetes, 1/3 for hypertension. I actually want to throw this out there too, because a lot of people think that you can out-exercise a lower quality diet. There's one really interesting study published, one of my favorite researchers, his name is Luigi Fontana. Back in 2007, he compared endurance athletes who ran about 48 miles a week, but they ate meat and animal products. He found, compared to people who ate a completely plant-based diet but were sedentary, the exercising omnivores had actually worse blood pressure. So I think that that's really interesting too, because like I said, a lot of people will think, yeah, but I'm not eating that well. It's okay because I exercise and that's okay. The other thing, cardiovascular disease. I was saying more than 4 times increased risk of ending up in an ICU. So again, here we're just going to look at the biggest studies. The biggest study on diet and health of all time, it's called the EPIC study. They found that people who avoided meat cut their risk of developing heart disease by 1/3. So again, we're seeing 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. I'll just throw one other piece out there, which is that excess body weight also increases the likelihood that we'll end up in an intensive care unit. And here too, so of all of the trials ever published, ever done, any research that don't limit calories and that don't make you exercise, the biggest improvements in body weight ever published came from eating a plant-based diet. So I guess in sum, plant-based diets are not a cure for COVID. I want to be completely clear about that, but they are effective at getting the risk factors, addressing the risk factors and making it less likely that people with COVID will end up in an ICU.
Yeah, thanks, David. That was a great answer. I'm resonating with the exercise at your way through a bad diet. Like reminiscing back to my college basketball days. And like, I wonder how good of a player I would have been if I would have eaten the right things. But hey, it's either here nor there. You learn with time. It's all good. But I definitely appreciate that. So cool. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. And James, this next question is for you with the food industry. And the question is, have you witnessed any big or small changes in the food industry, specifically either laws or initiatives, ever since Game Changers officially premiered? Oh, and actually, James, you're actually on mute. There you go.
Right, there you go. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's a great question. I haven't seen, I'm not aware of the laws that have been, any laws that have changed since the film came out. Obviously, it's only about 6 months old since actually the final version came out. But we do know that lots of things in the food industry have changed. So one of the biggest things from the film, which seems directly correlated to the film coming out, within a week of the film hitting Netflix, according to many metrics on Google Trends, whether it was plant-based recipes, plant-based athletes, plant-based diet. We saw that interest in plant-based eating more than tripled worldwide, including in America, but worldwide, in terms of searches for plant-based eating and those other search terms that I mentioned. So that was fantastic. And we've heard from many groups writing in saying that, sort of plant-based groups. There was one in England that only had sort of 25,000 followers on its Facebook page, and it had taken 10 years to get that, and it's within a week or so of the film coming out, over 100,000 members all of a sudden. So much like triple and quadruple the interest in plant-based eating around the world, which is was fantastic. We also know that dollar sales of plant-based foods grew by about 11% in 2019, with 39% of Americans actively trying to eat more plant foods. And just this month, the European Consumer Organization put out a report showing that 2/3 of consumers are open to change their eating habits just for environmental reasons. And one of the main things there, obviously, is that they're recognizing they should be eating more plant foods. One last thing, some of these leading health organizations are shifting again more and more all of the time to plant-based diets. So the new 2020 American Cancer Society guidelines, which just came out, and I'll read a quote here from them. They're saying plant-based diets are associated with lower levels of inflammation, improved insulin response, and less oxidative DNA damage. Plant-based diets are also associated with higher concentrations of beneficial gut bacteria. So basically, we are seeing a trend from sort of public interest to more plant-based eating, and we are seeing these health organizations shifting more and more all the time towards promoting plant-based foods as they recognize the science, which is great.
Yeah, that's great. As I think about what you were saying, I appreciate your answer, James. I know when it comes to industries or even policies or governments, they can be, in my opinion or my observation, a little bit slower moving, or like a big ship with a smaller rudder. But there's a variety of leading indicators of what the future could look like, which is really, really exciting. So cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Cool. All right, next question here, and open it up to the group here, but I actually give Charity the opportunity to take the lead on this one. This is when it comes to food choices. And the question is, what is your opinion on meat alternatives such as Impossible meat? And as a side here, the Impossible Burger, I'm also been sampling with the Beyond Burger or Beyond Meat. But that's the question. What is your opinion on meat alternatives such as Impossible meat, in parentheses, Beyond Meat? Does that come with some negative side effects? Does that come with the same negative side effects as animal-based?
I'm a true believer of balance. And as long as we have balance in our life and we're looking at everything in a balanced perspective, there's all different kinds of just discipline levels. And I compare myself to like a James or my husband, and I'm not an athlete by any means. I'm a normal person. I cannot eat the same thing every single day. I won't eat the same thing every day. But you athletes are psychotic. You could eat the same exact thing every single day for 5 days a week if you knew that will bring you to the championship. The average person like myself, we're not playing for a championship game. And it takes a little bit more to wean us off of like meat products and cheeses and all these different things. So in the beginning, using different meat substitutes actually got rid of that, oh my God, I can't have a steak or I can't have a burger. I'm losing out on this and that. You're just gaining so much more. And not everybody's a chef where they're going to go in their kitchen and whip up a burger patty from a bunch of vegetables. So I do find that there are some that are cleaner than others and have good ingredients, minimally processed. And that comes all down to looking at your ingredients and what's in it, which you should be doing that anyways. I'm a huge component of that because even in the beginning of me being plant-based, would bring something home and then flip the box around like, oh my God, why didn't I look at this when I was in the store? It has eggs in it, it has milk in it, it has butter, it has all these different things. So it's always being a good advocate of what is your end goal? And if you have an end goal, which giving yourself some wiggle room to move around in that space, because if I said you can't have any meat replacements and everything has to be from plants, you're going to see a lot less people going plant-based. And the reason why there's so many people that are able to embark on this journey is because we have so many substitutes out there. You name it, there's a plant-based version of it. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I do plant majority everything coming from a plant, but if I wanted a burger, whatever brand it is, because there's so many different brands out there, I'm gonna eat it, especially if I'm traveling, and I love them, and they don't do bad. It's just understanding what's in it in order for you to understand what's your benefits.
Oh, I think you're on. I think you're on mute, Larry.
I am. Take two. Try that again. I appreciate that, Charity. I love how the framing of that, like the negative framing of we can't this versus an empowerment type of framing. There's so many choices and alternatives. Really, really appreciate that. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add on to that because that was great, and I definitely agree with Charity there. You know, you've also got to meet people where they're at and their foods they're very familiar with if they're eating burgers. And it's actually one of the easiest ways to shift towards more plant-based eating is find just instant swap outs, right? Like Charity was saying, with it, whether it's milks or cheeses or burgers, you can just make simple swaps. And then obviously there's the environmental and health aspects. In terms of the environment, you know, some of these plant-based burgers are using up to 99% less water than creating a regular burger, which is important. And then from a health perspective, the question is always, is it healthy? It's always compared to what, right? So it's not really, is something healthy or is it not? It's compared to what. And so these plant-based burgers are going to be healthier than eating your regular burger. You know, if you're going to the fast food joint and it's got both options and that's where you're going, the plant-based burger is going to be healthier. Is it as healthy as, you know, a lentil stew or something that Charity might whip up from all Whole Foods? No, it's not, but there's that spectrum of choice, and you're going to just be better off getting it from plants.
Yeah, yeah, great point. One thing I've noticed myself doing when I'm shopping when you're upstream, Charity, as you were saying, at the grocery store, historically I'll tend to look at whatever I like to eat, and then I'll go right to the price, try to get the most taste value per dollar spent. But now I've tried to expand that to, I still look at the price, but I also flip the box around to see how much value I'm getting. And if that means I need to spend a little bit more because the value in relation to my goals, then it works. So cool.
All right, Larry, it's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Charity. Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead. It's probably.
Oh, I was just going to say, because you touched on price, Larry, and perhaps Charity and I were saying the same thing, but people think that it's going to be a lot more expensive. And certainly I do think it would be worth spending a bit more to get the right nutrients and so forth. But there is research that's been done showing that if, you know, they sort of try to plan a healthful diet, and there was one that had half as much meat as Americans would usually be eating, and one that was completely plant-based. And they found that on average, you would save about $750 a year building a healthful diet from plant-based, going plant-based rather than including meat in the diet. So I think that's telling. You know, if you start going out to fancy plant-based restaurants and buying highly processed packaged food where someone's done all the work for you, or, you know, and prepared it all, obviously you're paying a cost for that. But the same with a steak restaurant or, you know, packaged goods from meat. But overall, there does tend to be a saving. But Chad, have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, it was actually along the lines of that, of saving, because, and that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, whenever you're plant-based, I make it about the person. And if you actually step into that person's lifestyle and what they want, maybe they're just a beyond foodie person, they're going to like different things than the person that's going to do it solely for athletic reasons or for health reasons. And like Larry was stating, he does it for, you know, what's within its budget. People shop under budget. So all these parameters are brought into the equation when you're thinking about the person. So when I'm actually transferring someone from eating a full meat diet, dairy, all the above, I don't talk about any animal welfare. I don't talk about environment. I talk solely about them. I make it so egotistical about them that they can't even fathom that, you know, these other, you know, components to why you're eating this way. And when you make it about them, they're just so excited that someone took the time out to focus on who they are and what their needs are. And then once they're doing that for 2 to 3 weeks, I'm like, hey, did you know you saved this much money? And by the way, this is how many cows and pigs you saved. And guess what you did for the environment? And then that's when the proud moment comes in. You got to break down those barriers first. And that's what James was talking about, meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Great. I want to move on to the next question here. And actually, we'll start in reverse. We'll start with you, Charity, on this one. And this question here is, what are the best ways for us to get involved in outreach to inform people about the benefits of a plant-based diet? And you actually kind of touched on that a moment ago, but I'll let you keep going with that question.
I think the best way personally is to get tapped into these wellness communities within your own cities. And it was funny because when I first started this journey, I was like, oh, because I live in Nashville, nobody thinks like this. And, you know, I'm a California girl. Everybody in California is plant-based by now. And I had all these different reasons on why I couldn't do what I could do right here in my community. And then it was weird, watch what you ask for and watch what you pray for, because I would be out and about and I'll just be at a coffee shop and someone would say, hey, I know you and I follow you, or I saw you on a documentary, and we just put together this group and we're trying to do more outreach inside of, you know, the communities and whatnot. And after looking into it, there's so many of them right here in my own backyard. There's so many different communities, whether there's garden initiatives, whether it's going into the low income neighborhoods that are putting gardens and, you know, donating plant-based foods into those communities. You will be so surprised on what's going on in your own community, but you got to burst outside of your bubble, because in my beautiful little, you know, suburbio NFL bubble, no one was talking about the initiatives that are inside of, you know, my communities 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away from me. But once I started talking to different communities and like charities, like there's one that my husband works with called the Dream Center. They were very, very excited to say, hey, we do this, you know, meal initiative. Can we borrow you for a weekend? And can we do some plant-based meals and teach them about that? And I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. It's literally right in your backyard. There's Facebook groups, there's Instagram groups, there's so much out there, but you do have to break away from your little bubble.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate that, having the courage or the gumption to reach out. And then that, when you reach out, that might prompt, you know, indirectly different desires and interests from others.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a quick one. I did an initiative for the tornado relief here in Nashville. And I did plant-based burgers. I did some potato salad. And I did something else. Oh, some sausages as well. I just gave them out. Okay, I filled up the back of my minivan and I made over 100 meals. And I went to the hood. I went to the ghetto, literally where no one would go. I went there and I started giving out meals. And they was like, "What you giving out?" And I was like, "Oh, just try. I did not tell any of them. Then after they took their bites and they walked away and I told them what they were, when I tell you I had a whole hood talking about they're about to go plant-based, it was so cute. I was like, it's amazing on what you can teach them by actually just leading the way and letting them try it. And they're like, man, I ain't never had, this is that rich people stuff. I'm like, no, it's not. This is called health. You said you had diabetes. So it's just, it warmed my heart, because I'm like, wow, I've actually walked away from this. This is a beautiful thing of what you can give back, because they're so out of touch with what is health. They're just trying to get by, whatever their food stamps could buy, but you can teach them so much more than that they once knew.
Yeah, I love that. Access to health is not, you know, predetermined by class, income level, where you come from. I love that. Everybody's entitled to a wonderful, healthy life. Cool. Good. We'll keep going here. We got a few questions here, which is great. So really appreciate everybody bringing them in here. So this next question here, and this is from Jess Pink. Hopefully I said your last name right, Jess, but thank you for your question. And this question is, and I'll just put it out to the group. I recently spoke with a friend who watched The Game Changers, said this was finally a movie which made him rethink his nutrition while eating chicken. So, how would you recommend having a conversation, going deeper, and bringing them to actually change their nutrition in the long term?
I'll take a
I think
stab at
David or
that.
Charity, I think, would be best on that.
Charity, go for it.
I'm a huge component of leading by example. People can only listen to so many words and so many statistics to where they just go beep, beep, and then they're like kung fu blocking you. Like, I mean, even some people that are the most unhealthiest, my own mother. I mean, literally, my own mother. So I'm walking the walk. I'm not just telling you about this. You know, I could hit her with so many facts and all these different things, and doctors telling her that they're gonna have to remove her gallbladder if she doesn't change her diet. But when you actually just say, you know what, I'm gonna leave that person alone and not tell them about this amazing, you know, new way of living, I'm gonna show them anytime they came to my house, whether it was a birthday party, whether they were just coming over to have a coffee, it was a, you know, plant-based coffee with oat milk in it. And I allow people to see everything that you want, everything that you eat. I can eat it too, and it's better. It has more love in it, it has better ingredients in it, and you're just showing them. And a lot of the times, just like even with the athletes, when they came over, I was just having a cookout. I was just making my normal, you know, elotes and mac and cheese, and then they were like at the end, like, that was amazing, love the burgers. And that's when I was like, oh, by the way, it was plant-based. I didn't start off with telling them, hey, everyone, you're sitting down, you're going to enjoy your first plant-based meal ever, because I knew that the different mindset I will get. I was willing to just not tell them and literally tell my assistants and tell my friends, hey, don't tell anybody. Those are plant based. And just leading the example. And then if he's already thinking about this way of living, just say, hey, listen, there's a new plant based restaurant that popped up, or I've been always wanted to try this. You want to come with me? And take them along with you a little bit. It might be a little bit of hand holding in the beginning, but once they realize they walk into a restaurant, a plant-based burger or whatever the restaurant is, and they have so many of the things that they like to order, it actually gets their wheels turning, going, I can do this.
Ooh.
I want to just say, Charity, I love your approach. It's refreshing. I think when people consider a dietary change, their headspace goes right to what do I have to give up? You know, what is it that is my favorite food that I have to immediately eliminate? And you know, that scarcity mindset is really destructive. It sort of sets them up to fail from the very beginning. Whereas the way you're approaching it, it sounds like a headspace of abundance, and where it's, hey, look, here are these awesome things that you haven't yet tried, and that if you do, you'll love it. And you know, by creating a party rather than a prison, it's going to be more welcoming. So I love the way you're approaching it, and for what it's worth, I do the exact same thing with my own patients. I think it's absolutely the way ahead.
Totally agree.
Great, great. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next question here. And Charity, this one's for you. Looks like this is an NFL question. So, have more Titans/NFL players switched to plant-based diets after the amazing season of the Titans last year?
So what it did is it opened up the conversation, and it opened it up to so many guys wanting to try it, to where the guys that were like, oh, I'll never, like, no, I wouldn't ever do that, was starting to get their wheels turning. And even when I wasn't in season and cooking, because actually currently right now I'm not cooking at all because I'm writing my cookbook, these are their wives, their girlfriends are texting me, and I'm like, wait, you were the same guy that talked so much crap about my husband about being plant-based, but now you're, you know, on my phone asking me how could they try it and when can I make them a meal. What we did, and it wasn't even just the Titans, it was across the board. I'd even get NFL even questions from guys that are on different teams in the NFL or different sports, NHL and all different kinds of sports. What it did is it opened up the conversation for people to say, So you're not scrawny, you're not the wimp on the field. You are actually performing. And with this great documentary to actually back up all of this data and all of these guys that are actually doing the work. I mean, James and David, they did all the work for me. I just had to show up and look cute and smile. But it's so much information out there. It's not even a Titans questions. It's an NFL question. More guys are literally embarking on this journey because they're realizing the benefits. You didn't get one story about a guy that passed out on the field because he was plant-based. You didn't hear about anyone like, pulling muscles. You heard nothing of this sort. So it showed that walking down this journey, there's no ceilings. It's as good and as amazing as you want it to be. And when people ask me, are your guys still plant-based, just to get that out there, I don't know. I don't check in. I'm not a security guard for who's plant-based and who's not. But I can definitely guarantee you that I'm plant-based, my husband's plant-based, and that's how we eat.
It's funny, Cherry. I got to keep it 100 with you here. I'm reminiscing back to Titans season. They had a wonderful season last year. When the Titans played against the Baltimore Ravens, I was actually pulling for the Ravens. I'm from that region of the country. I'm from Virginia, and so I'm pulling for Baltimore. And watching that game, I'm like, what just happened? Tennessee was there. I didn't know what to expect. And then after the game, because from watching the movie, I knew about Derek, and I started to think, I wonder if that had a significant impact on the game. And wow.
Right. I mean, eating good is just overall good for you, but also it's the NFL where everyone you can be the worst team one year and the best team the next year. And I just think that ultimately it's their time to shine. I mean, they've been, the stepchild of American football for a long time. So it's like everybody has their time to shine.
Yeah, and I was real proud of them. They won an amazing season. Cool. Absolutely. I'll keep going here with the next question here. And David, this one's for you. And it reads, to create an anabolic environment and build muscle, we need to be able to be in muscle protein synthesis. I'm curious to know what high protein plant-based foods, for example, something that's equal to or greater than 20 grams of protein, would you recommend to stimulate muscle protein synthesis when building muscle?
Excellent question. I like these sorts of getting in the weeds, I think is important. So I agree, muscle protein synthesis, right? That's the way we can build muscle following exercise or at rest. And we need roughly, I'm going to throw out some nerdy numbers and we can remember or forget them. We need around 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, all the way up to about 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. And that seems to maximize our ability to really grow muscle, build strength. There was a meta-analysis just recently published in the last year or two, looking at exactly this, and really it's just reinforcing those numbers. Now, how do you? And by the way, the most recent, actually, I have it right here. When you become a sports dietitian, you read this book, you take a test, and there's a chapter here on plant-based nutrition. And the author of that chapter, Annette Larsen-Meyer, she basically says there's no convincing data to suggest that someone eating plant-based needs to change that range. That range would change. So I would say, in terms of, you eat as an omnivore, you eat as a vegetarian or vegan, plant-based, wherever you are on that spectrum, that's where you want to hit. Now, you can do it in lots of ways. There's lots of ways of getting there. You were just mentioning the different types of meat alternatives. I happen to really like lupini beans. I get these at Costco. There's a brand, what is it, Carrington Farms? I know, James, you and I talked about this a while back. It's like one serving of this has 15 or 16 grams of protein. I have 2 servings of that. It gives you as much protein. It basically saturates your body's ability to build muscle. So it's like 2 servings is like 30 grams of protein. It exceeds the amount of fiber you need to have in a day. So it's super healthy too. I just throw it in the microwave for like 3 minutes with some spices, and it's the easiest, laziest way to build muscle. I'm not saying everyone should do that. I'm just saying this is how one of the ways I do it. There's black bean pasta from there's a company called Explore Cuisine. 1 serving of that has 25 grams of protein. So, I mean, they're very, very easy ways if you know what to look for. If you were to just have white rice and hope that that's enough to maximally grow muscle, it's not going to happen. But it's actually really easy to make that, really to max out your capacity to do that, gunning for foods like this. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it was good. I was listening also just from a personal point of view, because what I find myself doing, again, early on my journey here, I tend to gravitate towards lentils, quinoa, kale, spinach. What else do I tend to gravitate towards? Those are some of the main ones, and so I'm always looking for, to build that out, because you can only eat the same thing so many days in a row. So that was good. That was good. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying really basic foods like what you're saying, like hummus is chickpea based. You're going to be getting protein in there. You have the kinds of burritos James is eating in the film. Black beans, you're packing this. It can be really easy. Beans and greens are really concentrated sources of protein, also tons of other nutrients. And so, yeah, it can be really simple. Like you said, you have a few that you're, rotating through. And as long as those include some kind of, like lentil soup, it's really easy to max out the amount of protein you need. And there's one particular amino acid called leucine that grows muscle is very anabolic. You get plenty of that in a bowl of lentil soup or a bowl of chili. So there are really common things, like maybe not everyone knows about lupini beans, but there are very basic things you can get at Chipotle. Right? They have the sofritas with the black beans, and you can easily make a meal work no matter where you are, no matter if you're cooking at home, if you're eating fast food or at a restaurant. So, yeah.
Cool. Great. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next question here, and this one's open to the group here. This is a good one here. So, are these highly processed plant-based alternatives really healthier than the meat/dairy or organic grass-fed version?
Yeah, I think I sort of touched on some of that specific to the burgers. Again, it's always healthy compared to what is what we go back to. And then some, it depends. Like, for example, there's some egg replacements that have more ingredients and are more processed, and then there's other brands that are just simply, David, in the Spiro, is it Spiro brand with the eggs, for example? I mean, it's very limited. It's like got some nuts or seeds or something in it, which is very minimally processed. So I think there's a range, right, of these things. And, for example, even if they're putting a lot of oil in it, you got to look at is that better than having tons of fat coming from animals? So to me, it's always compared to what. And again, if you're trying to be perfect and eat completely all whole foods all the time, that can be challenging for people, especially initially when you're transitioning. So I found with a lot of people that I've talked to, when they first transitioned, they're eating more of the plant-based meat alternatives or whatever, and cheese alternatives. And then over time, they'll find that they're eating more whole plant food. So sort of cheesy type things can be made of, Charity would answer this better, but like cashews, and there's sort of cheeses and cheese type flavors that you can make, right, Charity? Like what sort of things can you put in, or nutritional yeast? There's things that you can make to make.
Almost any nut, you can cream it and add some rather water or nut milk. You can even use tapioca flour. You can use tofu. And I just wish that I had my book out right now, because it points out all these things that you can achieve all these flavors without having it highly processed. But it comes to convenience for most people, and that's where it comes in. But to the question, it's so many different factors. It's not just health, but it's also environmental, and some people don't make that connection of it being an animal, but it's an animal. And are you okay with eating that animal over something that was minimally processed. I would choose B. I'm okay with knowing that, my plant-based burger only has 3 or 4 ingredients in it, or make a black bean burger from home. But we kind of touched on that, and I'm hoping that we're answering your question. And David can take a step at that as well. I put you on.
Ooh, yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, so some of these pieces are going to show up on a food label, and some of them are not, right? So you're going to see that cholesterol is going to be 0 on one of these plant-based, in one of the plant-based burgers, and it's obviously going to be present in an animal food. The companies are deliberately matching protein, so that's going to be equal. They're also making sure that iron is high. So these are things you will see on a food label, but then there are some things that you won't, like some big words, fancy sounding terms like heterocyclic amines that are known to cause cancer, right? There's not really much question about that. There are other things like even just cooking a hamburger, and we'll actually release into the air something called a polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. Again, these are like big words, don't memorize it. It's just these are the sorts of things that, and by the way, you find them in cigarette smoke and car exhaust. So you're not going to see that on a food label. So if someone's just saying all I care about is saturated fat and protein or whatever, it's going to miss a lot of those pieces that just don't show up on the food label. So I would agree with James and with Charity that it's absolutely a step in the right direction. If there's a spectrum and we have some homemade awesome bean burger, and we have here a hamburger, and by the way, a grass-fed hamburger probably is going to be less destructive, but I would still put and there's no research doing direct head-to-head comparison looking at like a Beyond Burger versus a hamburger, but there is research looking at sort of grass-fed, it's not grass-fed, but it's sort of wild-caught meat in Australia, and they found that even though conventional meat increased these 3 particular inflammatory markers, they're CRP, IL-6, and TNF-alpha, even though all 3 inflammatory markers increased eating the regular meat, it still increased eating the wild caught, just less, about 1/3 less. So I would say, in terms of that particular piece of that question, it will still increase inflammation, but not as much. And so we can sort of plot this all on a spectrum so that there are no good or bad foods. There's no clean or dirty, nothing. It's all like James has said before, it's all compared to what. And so we just start to map out that spectrum.
Yeah, that's great knowledge. Jared, I can't wait to get your cookbook. Just by what all of you just said, I'm like, I want to write down a bunch of little tips and tricks. I didn't know that about nuts.
And antibiotics, no one mentioned that, and the hormones that are in the food. I mean, just the simple fact that it's another species that you're eating.
Yeah, great, cool. Good question here. So this one's a big question here. So I'll open it up to the group. So I'll read it. Do you have research on the resistance people feel when things are labeled vegan, vegetarian versus plant-based? And was that a consideration when you chose to speak about plant-based? This is also relevant when we think about how we speak about cell-based meat, in parentheses, clean meat, cultured meat, etc., which in the big picture may be equally impactful in the long term in terms of environment and animal welfare, even if not health-wise.
David, do you want to address the research, and I can touch on why we used the term plant-based more in the film?
So I may misunderstand, but I thought that was that was what the question was driving at, right?
Well, I know it's a sort of 2-part though. One would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, but one would be, did we look at research as using the term plant-based versus vegan and how people are receptive to that? Is there research on that? And second point would be, did that influence us using the term in the film?
Got it. Yeah. So I don't think it will come as a surprise to anybody that the term vegan brings connotations, and this is supported in the literature, connotations that are not favorable. I'll put it that way. I think we all have a stereotype in our minds. And yeah, I mean, there was several steps forward in making the film and then sort of a couple steps back in order to sort of gauge the headspace surrounding really to understand the psychology and how do people approach this. And James, I think you can speak to that more than I can.
Yeah, I mean, just going back on the research, there is research basically, for example, at restaurants, if you have a menu and you have a second part of the menu that's like vegan options or vegetarian options, those options are chosen less than if those same items were mingled with the other items with a V on it or vegetarian or something to note it was vegetarian. And then another step further is if you intermingle those menu items in the menu and don't even mention that they're vegan or vegetarian, people will eat them even more because they sort of feel, oh no, I'm not vegan, I'm not vegetarian, so I'm not going to eat that. Now I think since that research came out a few years ago, I think that's probably changing because it's sort of more acceptable, more open, and people are more sort of flexitarian and trying more options. But just talking about the film, and I want to sort of clear up something here. Where there's been some misunderstanding often between what does plant-based mean. And I think if you ask 10 people in the field, whether it's scientists or people in the product space or whatever in the plant-based industry, it seems to have different definitions for different people. So while I do think there's differences in sort of perception between plant-based and vegan and vegetarian, it wasn't really the main reason that we mentioned plant-based. So when you look at a lot of the research, when we say plant-based, it doesn't necessarily mean 100% plant-based. So a vegan diet is a plant-based diet, but most vegetarian diets would also be considered plant-based in the literature because they're getting the vast majority of their calories from plants. And even a traditional Mediterranean diet where 10% or less is coming from animal foods, in the literature, that generally is sort of denoted as being plant-based in the scientific literature. And so now, of course, you can have an unhealthy vegan diet, eating lots of cookies and soda and so forth. And, you know, the difference between, say, 95% plant-based and only 50% plant-based, it's very clear in the literature that that's going to be beneficial if you look at the literature as a totality. Now, between 95% plant-based and 100% plant-based, we think there's enough evidence to show that there's benefit in terms of health and athletic performance. But to make that argument is more tricky. There's less research to show the difference between those two. So I think when you talk about plant-based diets, and certainly whole food plant-based, you know, the more whole plant foods you can get in your diet, the better. That's what we're talking about there is, you know, shifting in people in a more whole food plant-based direction. Could you argue, for example, if someone eats turkey on Thanksgiving and they have a bit of wild-caught salmon once every month, you know, is that going to have a detrimental effect? I think it would be hard to argue that it wasn't, but they're still eating a plant-based diet. You know, is a whole food, you know, vegan diet plant-based better than not? I think there's sufficient evidence, but we're not trying to tell people you've got to be vegetarian or you've got to be vegan. We're trying to show the facts, let them make their own, dispel some myths, let them make their own decisions, and hopefully that causes a shift towards more plant-based eating. If that makes sense.
Go ahead. Yep.
And I think that's what James pointed out in the documentary. It's not an all or none approach.
Right.
It's a gather this information and you make the deciding factor of what's best for you, not only for you, but your family. And back to the first part of that question about vegan versus plant-based. And it's not everyone who's vegan, because I have amazing vegan friends, and technically I'm vegan. I mean, I am 100% vegan. I just don't say I'm vegan because it's a really negative term because of what a lot of vegans have done thus far. And that's why I say that I'm a part of the rebranding of vegan, because the newer vegans like myself and the people in the film, we're so open-minded, we're so loving, we're so like, let's just help people get to their goals, opposed to, you know, if you're not doing this for this and that reason, then you're not a part of our group kind of feel. And so early on, I learned that I didn't even want to use the word vegan because, you know, no matter how much work I do right here in the field, right here in my own town, and how many people I can turn vegan, there were always those couple vegans that were saying, oh, well, how dare you? You haven't, ever mentioned on your page about animal activism and all these things, and which is a beautiful thing, and it's showing compassion in another way. But again, going back to that egotistical mindset, you have to break down these people's barriers, and you have to break down people's generational, palettes of how they ate, their grandparents ate. And so it's so much more inclusive to say plant-based without going, oh, I got to be a part of a club to say this is how I eat. And that's why, me personally in the film, and people have used plant-based because it's more inclusive, and we can all agree with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. This was great perspective because for me, I consider myself a young, consumer, a young transitioning person on this journey. So that was great perspective there. And yeah, I basically frame myself as a plant-based or a plant-dominant, consumer of food. And James, it's funny you mentioned you can have a bad vegan diet. I remember during the holidays, I love cookies. I'm a cookie monster. I was like, well, sugar's a plant. Eat up. Chocolate's a plant too. Let me take 2 cookies. So even within that, you still got to be wise.
Yeah, and like Charity pointed out, the approach of the film, it's not all or nothing. And actually on the website, we say it's all or something, right? And research shows whether it's going from sort of omnivorous to vegetarian to pescatarian to vegan, eating whole plant foods, or just shifting and getting more plant foods in your diet, the research does show that there's, a stepwise benefit from shifting towards more plants. So you can take as far as you want on the spectrum and get some benefit. Again, I personally do think, based on the literature that I've seen, that there's benefit to going 100%, but that doesn't mean, and just behaviorally, I think if someone says, okay, tomorrow I'm going vegan and that's it. First of all, if they don't know what to eat and they don't know, it's likely they're going to fail, and they'll feel like they failed and they just fall off altogether. And to also say, I'm never going to eat red meat, beef again, for example, I think is psychologically doesn't work for very people. They say, I'm going to try eating more plant-based for now and see how it goes. And people tend to feel better and realize that there's just great tasty food, especially if they see what Charity makes, and then they end up, eventually shifting anyway. So I think that's a better approach.
Yeah, great. All right, we have time for one more question here, and then we'll wrap up. And this question is open for anybody. Vegan diet versus keto diet. What do people need to know about the two, and which one would be a better choice overall? Kind of touched on that a moment ago.
Before David, I would love David and both of them to tackle this, but before, can I tell that person an experience of what I've had with an NFL player and us playing around with that? I hate keto. Let's just get out. I hate keto, and I'm going to tell you why. Keto is for short term, and it is for people that are morbid obese or trying to just kickstart your body into a certain give your body something that it's never had. It's not sustainable. You can't do it for long. But I will let the doctor give you those all the numbers and those words that we can't pronounce. But Derek decided when he being married to an athlete, he said he was going plant-based, went plant-based, and then decided that he was going to be plant-based keto because he wanted to take it up a notch, because he just thought he would become a superhero overnight if he just did both of them, and how amazing his performance would be, and all these different thoughts that he had on why he would go plant-based keto. By day 2, day 3, I hated this man. He was the grumpiest person in the world. It was nothing really able to sustain his body. Like, he literally would come in at 2:00, lay on the couch. He was like a lump on the log. And like, I noticed people that go through these like keto moments where they don't have energy. And this is why people that are always trying to eliminate carbs, I'm like, are you crazy? Where are you getting your energy from? Like, I mean, that's what carbs are. Like, carbs are an energy source. It's like putting gas into your Range Rover. Are you going to go put water in your Range Rover? No, you're not. You're going to put the 93. So it's when you start looking at your body like it's an actual machine, and whatever you're putting into it, whether it's the good stuff or the bad stuff, it's gonna only go as far as what you put into it. And I have to tell my athletes that too. I'm like, yeah, that's great. You're in the NFL now. Okay, you ate meat before you got to the NFL. Great, but now you can be one of the statistics and out the NFL in 3 years, or you can be one of those ones that are taking your career to a longer level because you're in a field of many Lamborghinis, many Ferraris. Everyone is the best at what they do. So what are you fueling your body with? So I'm not an advocate of keto. I see what it does to people. You have no energy and it wrecks your organs.
David, you want to piggyback on that? Thank you. That was awesome. Thanks, Charity.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, Charity, you are in favor of ketogenic diets, right?
No, not.
Like,
I believe in fueling the body, not depriving it.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I want to be as objective as possible in talking about this because, I mean, as you know, I spend all my time in the books. And there is some, well, let me just share. First I'll lay out the good. So the good news, if you're following ketogenic diet, is that these large scale studies find that low carbohydrate diets produce comparable weight loss and improvements in these cardiovascular risk factors for up to 2 years, right? So if you're looking, you're going to find those studies, and a lot of people will mention that. And those are legit studies. They're looking at biomarkers of health, but a biomarker of health is different than health. So if I said to you, I can help you follow a diet that will make everything look good on paper, but you'll die early, would you rather that, or you say, hey, maybe cholesterol doesn't matter to me as much, or the cholesterol in my blood or triglycerides or whatever blood lab you care about. I'd rather have a long, healthy, high quality life. So I shared the good. As far as the bad is concerned, by the way, I should also just note that even though some of those biomarkers did improve, there's a decent amount of research showing that there's a decrease in blood flow, like reduced endothelial function. We showed this in the movie, that blood flow through the arteries actually decreases. There's a paper that I remember reading showing a trend towards increased in an inflammatory marker called C-reactive protein. That was by 50% in just 1 week. So basically, you know, you can drop. I'm sorry, there's a lot of pieces to this, but you'll only see improvements resulting from the weight loss, not from the change in the quality of the diet. So you can have two things working in opposition where you'll say, but my cholesterol went down. Well, that's because you lost weight. But what if we were to compare the plant-based weight loss protocol to a keto protocol? And actually, I'll talk about that in 2 seconds. But first, I just want to say there's the biggest thing I can share is in 2018, there was a meta-analysis published by Harvard researchers, and they just showed that people who were eating an animal-based low carbohydrate diet had an 18% increased risk for premature death. Now, they were eating animal-based foods to drop their carbohydrate intake, but when people replaced these carbohydrates with plant-based sources of fat and protein, think like avocado and nuts and seeds, as opposed to bacon, they actually had an 18% reduction in risk of a premature death. So I actually have to say, I think that focusing on whether it's ketogenic or not ketogenic or low carb or high carb, I think it's the wrong metric to pay attention to. I think the quality matters a whole lot more than whether you're getting more carbs or fat. And actually, there's recent research just published this year in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. And they confirm this. They show that whether you're eating low carb or low fat, it's the saturated fat, which is found primarily in animal foods, increased the risk of dying early, whereas the plant-based protein and fat decreased that risk. So again, I really think it's the wrong metric. I really do. But I will just throw one more point out there. There was an awesome study. And actually, it's either just been published or it's just about to be published. And I recommend this to anyone who's trying to use this for weight loss. So the study is, the author's name is Kevin Hall. He's out of the NIH, I believe. And the study is called A Plant-Based Low-Fat Diet Decreases Ad Libitum Energy Intake Compared to an Animal-Based Ketogenic Diet. And what they're basically showing is that if you let people eat as much as they want of a ketogenic diet or a plant-based diet, and you're trying to pull or allow, you're sort of gauging what happens with their weight, a plant-based diet actually fills them up more and actually can reduce food intake more. Now, that's not to say that you can't eat more if you want to. You can totally eat more guacamole and like hummus and things that are going to more nuts and seeds and dark chocolate. You can totally do that. But yeah, I just wanted to share that these are just recently paired head to head in an amazing study, and that's one that's worth looking at in evaluating what kind of diet you want to follow.
And if I could just jump in on that, because obviously David's touched there on sort of health and weight loss. But of course, because of the nature of the film, there is sort of research as well looking at athletic performance. And what it seems to show is, let's say you've got a spectrum of types of athletic endeavor, and on one end you would have sort of endurance race walking, so not highly explosive, long duration, and on the other end you might have like shot put or javelin. And so if you eliminate the carbohydrates and switch your body so it can run on fats efficiently, when it's running on fats more efficiently, it's now decreased its ability to run efficiently on carbohydrates, say on the endurance race walking. And then on the shot put end, you're not really using glycogen stores from carbohydrates either. You're using, and David can correct me on this stuff, but like you're using ATP, you're using a different type of energy system. And so on both ends of the spectrum, people that switch onto a keto diet still might be able to perform as well, certainly in the short term. But for every other sport in between, whether it's basketball or MMA or soccer or whatever, those sports are really going to be better off with having carbohydrates to replenish glycogen stores. And in fact, there's some research showing on these very low-fat diets that people feel like they're doing better, but when they're actually measured, they're not. Their performance is not going up. Like their body weight might drop, and they can do the same amount of pull-ups and push-ups or whatever. But of course, if your weight dropped and you can only do the same amount of pull-ups and push-ups, your relative performance actually decreased. And so there might be, people might do okay on these two ends of the spectrums in those extreme sort of longer endurance, slow and steady state, or in this sort of hyper explosive shot put that's not reliant so much on glycogen stores, but everything else in between, from a performance standpoint, you're going to be better off having decent glycogen stores coming from carbohydrates.
I'm sorry, I want to piggyback real quick on that. There's a study just published by a fantastic nutrition researcher. Her name's Louise Burke. She actually looked at elite race walkers. She replicated this study. So she did this twice, which almost never happens anymore, sadly, in the world of scientific research. But basically, she just showed that in elite race walkers, even though it is more endurance based, that ketogenic diet decreased their exercise economy and they performed worse. And also just for the rest of us who are just general exercisers doing it more for health or to look good or whatever, there's a paper published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association. I'm going to quote from it. They say ketogenic low carbohydrate diets enhance fatigability and can reduce the desire to exercise in free living individuals. So they're basically saying for the rest of us, it's going to drop your motivation, and that's really what we need. We don't want to be discouraged from doing something that's already probably not the highlight of our day.
Great. All great points. Very, very powerful stuff. I know we could go on for a while, but I know we're at time here. So I just wanted to wrap it up by just saying a big thank you to Charity, James, and David for joining us today, and also a special thank you and acknowledgement to Sarah Kenny, my partner here, just helping me with the questions that were coming in. And then finally, a big thank you to everybody that's out there, my Google colleagues, as well as my Facebook friends, for your attendance and participation. And so hopefully we'll get to do it again soon, another time. But until then, I wanted to say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
All right, we are officially wrapped, everyone. Great job.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think David might have jumped off, and Charity too, right? I just muted myself in case anyone wanted to. Oh, there's Larry.
Yeah, I'm still. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I can stay on here for a second. I'll run to another one. But yeah, I think I'm like, I know I
That
had
was
fun.
great. Yeah, that was great. Thanks so much, Larry. I really appreciate your time, and I think you did an amazing job moderating there. I think we got a good split of questions and different panelists answering. Right, I thought it was a good split and some good information, I think.
Yeah, cool.
I love how
Yeah,
David can just go and pick the study and the author's name.
it's going. Like, go get him, man. Go get him. Yeah. Now, Jason, I think Sarah said that this is recorded and can be shared later. I think. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Happens to the best of us. As I was saying, it'll be living as a post in the group, and then me and Esau, who's on the call now, we're gonna download the stream from our end, and we'll have a video file of it available for you guys shortly.
Cool. Yeah, because I know on the Google side, I don't know how many people were on there, but I know my folks, so Michael Bacher and the gang, James, that they're super interested and supportive, and yeah, curious to. I'd like to show it to them, or at least like, do we know how many people were in or like logged in? Like
From what I was seeing when I was monitoring the stream, we had a peak of around 65, and then it held steady at like 60 people for the duration of the event.
Okay, cool. That works.
I think so. For now, I think as long as it's internal for now, some of these things, it's always like if it goes fully to the public, if we decided we wanted to do that at some point, always like David just to check it over in case, I made or Charity made an error or something. But I think we were all on point anyway. But certainly feel free to share it internally. Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff.
Sweet. And then, so we'll send the file over to Sarah and her team, and she'll get it to you guys once it goes through all of our legal and comms approvals.
Cool.
Great.
Sounds good. Well, good stuff. I got to run.
Before you guys go, I just want to say, like, I appreciate this meeting so much. Jason mentioned it to me, wanted me to be a part of it because I've been vegan for about a year. I've seen Game Changers, and it's what really kind of helped me think about it. My girlfriend's been vegan for about 3 years, so she really gave me that nudge. So this was incredibly helpful. And the last question, that one was me, because I've been hearing differences between keto and veganism, and like my cousin just started keto, so having this feedback would be great, so that we could communicate to him. It's like, yo, this is what keto's doing to you. But it's been really great.
It's crazy how people associate weight loss with health, right? And certainly there is benefits to losing weight, but anytime you can lose weight from having a cocaine habit, and literally your blood markers will, because you lost weight, and so your body, you just have improved blood markers. It just doesn't mean you can have a parasite and you'll lose weight, and your cholesterol comes down. Like the Maasai, people often say, well, the Maasai tribe, they eat just meat and milk, and well, one, they live at elevation, so your cholesterol is lower. Two, they literally have parasites from eating they drain the blood of the cows to eat, so they get parasites from that, and the parasites eat the cholesterol, so they get lower cholesterol. But they're also dead by the time they're like 45. And they still get atherosclerosis, and so just because those markers are down doesn't mean you're healthy. And it's just not sustainable. You're not fueling your body efficiently. It's
really appreciate the help. You guys are super knowledgeable, and again, I couldn't be happier for being part of this meeting.
Thanks for your help. Thanks so much, Larry. I really appreciate it. It's actually my 10th wedding anniversary, which I'd forgotten about when I said okay to this date. So I'm now going to go and spend a bit of time with my wife. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you.
All righty. I'll see you guys.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Esau, we can stick around and just make sure that the codec is dropped. All good.
Cool.
Nice. One smooth, dude.
Yeah, I'm happy I was able to get my question asked, because I wanted.
Your question was the one that got them going too.
Yeah, because I know like keto and veganism, like they're always constantly butting heads, and like there's
Yeah.
so many different people that like are pro keto, pro vegan, or just like neither. So having them kind of like discuss this was like really interesting, and man, they got so
Yeah.
into it, and I was
They had
digging
some opinions.
it.
That's hella funny. Nice, dude. That went a lot smoother than I was hoping. Nice work,
Mhm.
dude.
Yeah. So